Most of you know that one of my favorite people in the world right now is Gary Vaynerchuk. If you don't know who he is, I really recommend you Google him and look him up. But one of the things that he says all the time that I really think is important, he says the fastest way to go out of business is to be romantic about how you make your money. And I think artists in general are more guilty of this than any other group. And if you're romantic about how you make your money, there's a very good chance you're not going to make very much of it. So if you want to hear more on my thoughts about this, stick around and we'll get to that. You know, one of the stereotypes about artists is the starving artist stereotype. And that whole idea that if you pursue art as a career, you are destined to be living a life of poverty, starving in a garret, and never achieving any sort of commercial or financial success. But that myth has kind of grown to the point where not only is it seen as a negative stereotype, some artists actually embrace this almost like a badge of honor, that their lack of success is somehow a badge of their artistic integrity. And one of the missions that I have in life, aside from empowering people to kind of achieve their dreams, is to really bash that myth and to bash that whole idea that if you are successful, somehow you've sold out and you don't have the same amount of integrity as someone who's never sold a painting in their life but continues to push along doing that. But one of the things I think that we all buy into the romance of this whole idea is some of the sayings and the myths that are out there. So I'm going to today just tackle a couple of those and maybe try and replace them with sayings that I think are philosophical thoughts that are more conducive to achieving your dreams. So one of them is that I love this, and it just sounds so beautiful. If you do what you love, you will never have to work a day in your life. And that just sounds amazing. And it's like, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to just do what they love and never have to work a day in their life? But what I think that kind of translates into is that, well, if I'm doing what I love, I should never have to do anything that I don't love or that I don't want to do. And I think that's a kind of a trap that a lot of artists fall into, that they think they should only be doing things that they love. Well, the hard reality is, if you want to be an artist, a professional artist who earns a living, you're an entrepreneur. You're running a small business. There are a lot of things involved in running a small business that are not as much fun as standing up here pushing paint around. And if you want to create your living based on your art, then you just have to accept the fact that you have to do a lot of work. Not only working on improving your skills, your creativity, your conceptual knowledge, but a lot of the drudgery work that goes along with any sort of business. Because especially when you're starting out, you're a one-man band. So it's like, you don't like doing financial reports and you don't like doing the bookkeeping and your quarterly tax returns. It's like, too bad. That's what comes with this. But that whole idea that if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life, I think people have translated that into thinking, well, if it feels like work, I shouldn't have to do it because I'm an artist or an artiste. My thoughts on this are, rather than if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life, my thoughts are, if you are audacious enough to want to do what you love for a living and have the world reward you for that, then you better be willing to work harder at that than anything you've ever done before in your life, because that is actually what's required. It's not easy to make a career out of doing what you love. But the thought that somehow you can just do it and the world will reward you and reward you for a lack of effort. Again, that's a myth that I just think doesn't exist. One of my favorite descriptions of an artist was James Brown, who, a huge, iconic singer, performer. And his moniker, they always introduced him as the hardest working man in show business, because that's what it takes. If you want to be successful, you have to work hard. So let's kind of just get that off the table. That whole idea, if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life, it's horse crap. You really need to be willing to work harder at that than anything you've ever done before in your life. Because trust me, it was very easy to be successful as a police officer. All I had to do was show up when I was supposed to be there and put an 85% effort in. That's enough almost in anything to allow you to excel. But if you want to be an artist, and that's an entrepreneur, then working just 5 days a week, 8 hours a day ain't gonna cut it. And 85% effort is likely not gonna cut it either. So another one of the myths, I just read this the other day. And again, these things sound so great. And if you buy into it, I think it's at your own peril. And it was something along the lines of this: an artist sells what he paints, and a craftsman paints what he sells. So there's that whole idea of the artist being totally oblivious to the market, not caring at all about what the market wanted, not caring at all if other people like what they do, just kind of squirreled alone in their studio, pursuing their own vision. That's nice. That's nice if that's kind of thinking about the way you wish the world would be, and it would be nice if that was the case. It would be nice if you could just go and do what you want without regard to what anyone else thinks, and the world would reward you for that. But that's not the way the world is. The world has to value what you do in order to reward you for doing it. Now, should you go and chase after what you see people buying in terms of your art? No. But there is a way to find your own unique voice, doing something you love, where you love the work, where the public will also buy it. But many artists, again, there's that whole sort of feeling that if you are kind of doing it for the market, you're somehow selling out. Well, let's take a look at history. Leonardo da Vinci, right? No question he was an artist. A lot of the work that he did, it wasn't work that Leonardo did. It was work he was doing for patrons. They were commissioned portraits or commissioned pieces from the churches. Michelangelo didn't paint the Sistine Chapel because that was his lifelong dream, to paint this huge ceiling. He painted that because it was a commission from the Pope. He was painting what he would sell. He wasn't selling what he would paint. And Michelangelo actually didn't even really want to paint. He wanted to sculpt. But the Pope said to him, if you want to get this marble and you want to get these commissions, you want to do the Pietà, you'll finish my ceiling first. And whether you go back through Rembrandt, any of the famous artists that we know, they all did commission work. Or even if it wasn't commission work, it was work that they knew would please patrons. Because at the end of the day, if you're a professional, you're doing this to earn a living. And so this whole idea of labels about this person's an artist and this person's only a craftsman, I think it's extremely, extremely divisive, and it has no business being here. One of the classic examples of this is Norman Rockwell. I don't think there's anybody alive today that wouldn't say he was an amazing artist. But during World War II, when they had the war artists that were being gathered together to create art and document the efforts of the troops in World War II, they actually turned down Norman Rockwell because they said he was an artist, he was an illustrator. And this is the guy that did the Four Freedoms. If you don't know what the Four Freedoms are by Norman Rockwell, it's freedom from want, freedom from hunger, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion. Probably the most powerful series of paintings probably ever created to really kind of put a message across. And according to that statement, he was not an artist, he was a craftsman. So, I mean, those are just a couple of those types of things. And if you go and you search out all these art quotes, there are hundreds of these type of quotes. And they sound really great. It sounds really magical, but oh yes, you know, like it's very pure and all that. But at the end of the day, the world doesn't care about that. If you're trying to make a living as an artist, then you have to consider who is going to buy your artwork, and it's all about hard work. So let me talk about a couple of sayings that I've heard over the years that I really do love. So one of them, I believe it was from Chuck Close, and he talked about inspiration. And he said, this, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically what he said is inspiration is for amateurs and posers. Professionals get up and go to work every day. And I just totally agree with that. The thought of sitting around waiting for inspiration, it's like, you know, again, I had another career. There was no waiting around for inspiration when I was a police officer. You get up, you go to work, you do your job. If you are an artist, your job is to get your butt in front of the studio, in front of your easel, and to paint. Another one by Mark Twain. I think he was the first one to say this, which is the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I have found that to be true over and over in my career. And let's just finish off with one. I just heard this the other day, and I'm not actually sure who it was from. And it's an old-timey thing, which is when nothing else is working, hard work will usually work. And all of those types of things that we all know, they're tried and true. We apply them in everything else in our life. But for some reason, when we get to the creative arts, whether it's painting or music or filmmaking or writing or whatever, we seem to think, oh no, that doesn't apply, that there's some magical kind of thing, the muses that kind of come in, and that there's some gift that gives us this creativity. And I just know from my experience, that's not true. It hasn't been true for me. And I know a lot of other successful artists, from what I see from them, it's not true from them either. So again, getting back to that whole thing that Gary Vaynerchuk says, there's no quicker way to put yourself out of business than being romantic about how you make your money. You can be romantic about a lot of other things in your life, but if you are going to pursue a career as an artist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business person, the world or the market doesn't care that this is your dream, that you are in flow, that you are doing what you love to do. The market cares about what is it you produce and do they value it. And the best way that I have found to produce the best work possible is just through hard work and persistence. So I hope you have enjoyed this and found it helpful. If you have, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I welcome your comments and questions. I'm sure I'll probably get a few on this one. And yeah, I'm Tim Packer. I thank you for your time.